Kelvin did not know what he had until he was standing in a boardroom 10 years later, looking at what she had become without him. They had met in Aba, in the narrow street behind the Polytechnic, where Princess sold fabric from a table she set up every Saturday morning. She was 19 then, a girl with more ideas than money, and a sketchbook she carried everywhere. She drew clothes the way some people write in diaries, constantly, privately, as if the designs would disappear if she did not get them down fast enough. Kelvin used to stop at her table not always to buy, but because she made him feel like the street was more interesting than it had been before she arrived on it. He had nothing in those days and he did not pretend otherwise. He was the son of a carpenter from Nkupor who had come to Aba to study civil engineering on a scholarship that covered his fees, but not much else. He ate modestly. He wore the same 3 shirts in rotation and did not apologize for it. Princess knew all of this, and it did not change how she looked at him. She had grown up with very little herself, and she understood that a man's present circumstances were not always the measure of what he was capable of. She saw something in Kelvin that she trusted. That was enough for her. They were together for 4 years. She supported him in the ways available to her, pressing his clothes before important presentations, keeping food for him when he came late from the library, lending him money twice when his allowance did not arrive on time, and doing it without making him feel the weight of it. She was that kind of person, generous without theater. When Kelvin graduated and got his first real job with a construction firm in Lagos, she was the first person he called. She cried on the phone. He told her she had been part of every step. She believed him. The distance started slowly. Lagos was loud and full, and Kelvin was young and newly paid, and moving in circles he had never had access to before. He told himself he was busy. He called less. When Princess called, he picked up, but he was always somewhere, always just leaving or just arriving, always with the sound of other people in the background. She noticed, but she did not complain. She trusted the foundation they had built, and she was patient in the way that people are patient when they believe something is worth waiting for. He met Tiffany at a colleague's birthday party in his 2nd year in Lagos. She was beautiful in the kind of way that required maintenance, and she wore that maintenance openly, as a statement. She knew exactly what she looked like, and she understood how to position herself in a room. Kelvin was not the first man she had targeted with that particular combination of attention and availability, and he would not be the last. But he was the current one, and he did not have enough experience with that kind of woman to recognize what was happening until he was already in the middle of it. He called Princess on a Wednesday evening and told her it was over. He did not offer much explanation. He said he had met someone and that things had changed and that he was sorry. Princess sat with the phone in her hand for a long time after he hung up. She did not call back. She did not send messages asking for reasons or begging for reconsideration. She put the phone down, went to her sketchbook, and drew until her hand was tired. That was how she processed things. She always had. Tiffany lasted 14 months. She left when Kelvin's savings ran low after he invested badly in a property deal that did not deliver. He had told her it was a temporary setback. She said she understood and then began to be unavailable. By the time the money recovered, she was with someone else entirely and did not seem troubled by the transition. There were others after Tiffany. Kelvin was not a bad-looking man, and he had built a reputation in his field that gave him a certain standing, so women were not difficult to find. But he found the same pattern repeating itself in different faces. Women who were present when the projects were flowing and scarce when they were not. Women who asked about his properties before they asked about his family. Women who performed affection with the kind of precision that eventually revealed itself as performance. He went on dates that felt like interviews. He left dinners feeling assessed. He was 34 years old, and he had not felt genuinely known by anyone since Abba. He did not let himself think about Princess often. When he did, he pushed it aside with the practiced efficiency of a man who had made a decision and did not want to examine it too closely. He told himself she had probably moved on. He told himself they had been young, and that what they had was the kind of thing that belonged to a particular season of life, and not beyond it. He told himself many things, and most of them were true enough to be useful. A project came through his firm in the middle of the year. A new commercial building commissioned by a fashion consortium, multiple floors, premium finish, the kind of project that required a lead contractor with a serious portfolio. Kelvin's firm was selected and he was assigned to head it. He reviewed the brief, studied the consortium's requirements, and prepared for the first board meeting without knowing who would be sitting across the table. He walked into the boardroom on a Tuesday morning and saw her name on the placard before he saw her face. Princess Okafor, lead board member, OK4U Fashion Group. He had a few seconds to absorb this before she walked in. She had not changed in the ways he expected and had changed entirely in the ways he had not anticipated. She was composed in a way that had nothing to do with effort. She wore a suit she had almost certainly designed herself, structured and precise, the kind of thing that announced its maker without announcing itself. She greeted the room and sat down, and when her eyes reached him across the table, she paused for exactly 1 second and then continued with the meeting. They were professional throughout. She asked sharp questions about the construction timeline and structural specifications. He answered them with equal precision. Nobody in that room would have known they had once shared a life in Aba over a fabric table and a sketchbook. When the meeting ended, people gathered in small groups the way they always do after boardroom sessions. Kelvin waited until the room had thinned and then walked toward her. She looked at him directly when he approached, the way a woman looks at something she has already made her peace with. He said her name, she said his. He asked how she was, and she told him honestly that she was well. He asked about her life and she told him she was married, 5 years now, and that she had 2 children, a boy and a girl. She said it plainly, not to wound him, simply because it was the truth, and she had no reason to soften it or perform around it. He nodded. He told her she looked like everything she had always said she wanted to become. She smiled at that, a real smile, and said she had simply kept drawing. My people, please hit that subscribe button and like. Now let's continue. They worked together for the duration of the project, 8 months of site visits and board updates and professional correspondence. Kelvin was good at his work, and she respected that. She was exacting in her requirements, and he respected that too. They found a working rhythm that was functional and occasionally warm. It was in the 5th month of the project that she brought Ngozi to a site review. She introduced her as a close friend, and the introduction was deliberate in the small way that Princess did deliberate things, quietly and without fanfare. Ngozi was an architect who had consulted on several of the interior specifications and had known Princess since her first big sales days in Enugu. She was direct and unhurried, and she had a way of saying exactly what she thought without making it feel like an attack. Kelvin noticed her the way he had stopped allowing himself to notice women, carefully and without rushing toward it. He asked Princess afterward, in a quiet moment by the elevator, if Ngozi was seeing anyone. Princess looked at him for a moment and then said she was not. Then she said she would not do anything unless he was serious. He said he was. She studied him the way she used to study a piece of fabric before deciding what to make of it. Then she said she would speak to her. The project was completed on time. At the closing dinner, Ngozi and Kelvin sat 2 seats apart, and by the end of the evening, 1 seat apart. Princess watched from across the table and said nothing and felt something close to satisfaction. Kelvin had spent 10 years looking for a woman who would see him and stay. He had looked in the wrong rooms and for the wrong signals, and it had cost him a decade of his own company. What he had not expected was that the woman who first saw him clearly would be the one to eventually point him towards someone who could do it again. Some things leave and do not come back. Some things leave and send back something better in their place. The difficulty is in knowing which is which, and usually by the time you know, it is already decided.